Hi, I'm Chris Hyzer. I've worked at University of Pennsylvania for almost 20 years. I've worked on the Grouper project for 12 years. Currently lead of the Grouper team. I'm a developer and I've been giving trainings for 7 years. We had 2 trainings last year. We try to do 2 or 3 every year. Each time we give the training, we have more and more content to give since the Grouper toolkit is constantly expanding. We have the fundamentals of Grouper and centralized access management. We have hands-on with Grouper, so you know how to use the various tools. And then going through all the new features or the new guidance about how to do things. So students in the course don't need to be hardcore developers or system administrators or anything. They do need to be computer savvy and be able to click and type and copy and paste. And with that, we can instill a lot of sort of what central access management is and how to use Grouper.
How do you as an instructor keep up with the software as it evolves so you can bring the practical implementation of it to students?
That's a good question. Well, my primary role on Grouper is the Grouper lead. So I work with the developers in the community to decide what the roadmap is. And then I'm also one of the developers. So a lot of the features in Grouper I have coded and tested and documented. And so really the pulse of the project is within the team, and Chad, the co-instructor, and I know exactly what's in the project, what's in the product, what's coming in the future, how everything works. And so that the fact that we are the trainers and we're the developers on the team ensures that everything in the training is sort of from the horse's mouth.
Great. So who should sign up for Grouper training?
People who are new to Grouper and want to learn more about it. People who are experienced with Grouper and haven't been trained in a while. People who support applications that use authorization, which is pretty much all applications. People who care about your institution's digital resources, which should be everybody. If you're a developer, if you're an access administrator, if you work at a help desk, if you have budget for training, take the training. It's really for a wide audience. We do cover administering Grouper, installing Grouper, and things like that that are a little bit more technical, but we spend most of the time talking about access management in general, how to solve use cases with Grouper. So I think it's useful and accessible to all.
That sounds great. How does Grouper training help students take on challenges when assigning roles and giving access?
Grouper role-based access control, which we cover, attribute-based access control, if you're familiar with those terms. They're all very abstract concepts. And if you don't have coordination or some principles and standards, people will take those concepts and tools and take similar problems and solve them in very different ways. So in the past, we've sort of seen that as a community, as an issue, and many institutions have collaborated to craft what we call the Grouper Deployment Guide, which consists of best practices of how to install and use Grouper. So there are best practices and guidance about how things should be designed, and using those, you can do things in a more consistent way, reduce future tickets, ensure that the right people have access to the right roles, reduce the training needed when people come and start supporting things in Grouper that have been done in a way that they understand. So part of assigning a privilege is just adding someone to the right group, and that sounds simple enough, right? But part of it is knowing which group to assign to, analyzing the policy of who's allowed to do what in an application and trying to figure out why someone does or doesn't have access to it. If someone's contract expires and they lose access to a ticket tracking system, or if someone stops getting a paycheck, those things need to be addressed. And if you go through the training, you'll learn how to figure those things out and fix those situations. Well, I've seen people go through the training, and I've interacted with people who use Grouper or coworkers who've been through the training or haven't been through the training. So at Penn, we've had a lot of coworkers that have gone through the Grouper training, and people who are at various levels of being a technical person. But after going through the training, I've noticed that they speak a common language about access management, that they can take a ticket, which is sort of, each one is sort of a new situation, and to look at that and analyze it and be able to resolve that ticket without having to escalate it to the higher level to get help. So it's nice to be able to interact with ex-students and see how they've taken the concepts and applied those successfully to their jobs. Discussing access management with people who haven't taken the training, you sort of have to go through all those introductory concepts again, or using terms that you just sort of expect people to know. It's like you're on another planet and talking to aliens, and you don't have a common language, and you're trying to discuss access management, and it's frustrating. So yeah, it's nice to have people go through the training and sort of be on the same page.
How does Grouper help with provisioning entitlements to LDAP, SAML, messaging, and services?
So apps consume authorization data through those channels. So an app might check LDAP to see if someone's allowed to do something, or they might get a SAML attribute value that says they're allowed to do something. And that's only part of the equation. The other part is the policy that decides what that value is in LDAP, or what data to send through SAML. So the policy in Grouper that's going to control that access management might be partially automatically provisioned. So someone has a certain job role, and they're in the policy somehow, or they might be manually assigned. So you might have admins to an application. You can't decide that they're an admin based on their job title or their department. They just have to be manually picked because there's only a handful of them. But they still need to be removed if they leave or switch jobs. So you can have authorization data in LDAP or SAML or messaging or whatever, but you need to make sure that that the right people have access to the right services, and the people who shouldn't have access don't. So Grouper can quickly and consistently set up those policies. Grouper can provision those to LDAP, or provision those through SAML, through your identity provider, and delegate the management of those policies to the people who need it. And the people who need it are the application access administrators, who need to use the Grouper UI to very quickly see who the admins are, who they need to add, if they need to clone an admin when someone leaves for a while and someone else takes over, if they need people to automatically be deprovisioned when they leave, or if data changes about them, or to ensure that people have the right training and have the right credentials. Maybe they have to use MFA. So Grouper can do all of that, all that for you to set it up to enable that. It visually displays the policies so that you can easily see how they're made up, as opposed to looking at them through some sort of cryptic coding language or something. You can get reports about who has access, and much more.
How did the format of the training sessions work for students? Tell me about the demonstrations you did.
So the format, I think it works for students pretty well. Every training, we have a feedback loop where people can give suggestions about how things can be improved. And we take that to heart. And every training, we spend time before the training revamping the content a little bit or a lot, and trying to find the where the needle should point so that the most number of students are happy with it. You know, of course, some students are going to say things are too fast, and some students are going to say it's too slow. But we want to sort of get in the middle and find the speed that most people are happy with. So it's a lot of content. And we try, again, not to take up a lot of time of people. As I've said before, with the pre-work, we try to get a lot of the stuff that you don't really need an instructor for out of the way. And if people are experienced with grouper, they can kind of breeze through that part. And then when the interactive sessions start, these are the things that are a little bit more subtle, that are complex, that might raise some questions from people. So there's some discussion times in there. The instructors spend time showing examples of grouper, maybe from their own institutions, just to show how things scale or how things end up looking in the real world. And we go over a few exercises where there are use cases, and we discuss how to solve those use cases using grouper. We also have quizzes, so that we can just sort of get a feedback loop and see what the pulse of the class is. If there are other household members that are eavesdropping on the training and like quizzes, they're welcome to take them as well. We've seen that. And we try to put as many grouper fish puns in every training as we can. So if you catch all those lines, you know, you might get hooked on training, and that's why it's called grouper school, because fish and school. So
I was reading the feedback that students took in the survey last year, and I noticed that there were some comments that they went back to campus, and because they had a basic knowledge of how to implement and use grouper, it made the developers' lives easier.
That's a frequent feedback, and that's sort of why we have grouper and why we have the training. So you know, if you're a developer on campus and you have an access requirement, if you have to invent a solution to that each time, or you have to code something custom, or you have to sort of figure out a way to solve that, it's obviously more difficult than if you have a toolkit that can do that for you. So centralized access management is one part of it, but having grouper, which is used in many institutions, might make your access management more standard than a custom solution. So it enables best practices, like I was talking about with the grouper deployment guide. It enables some things that might previously not be possible. If you have a system that doesn't allow enabled and disabled dates, or complex policies where you can check training or check some sort of job status. You know, maybe there's a requirement where you have a group of people from an application. So if you have like a group in Banner in your student system, and you want that same group to be able to access some part of a custom application, that might be a heavy lift if you don't have a way to do that. But with grouper, you can do that pretty easily. So, you know, having your access administrators get reminded periodically that they need to review manual lists or even policies. They can get those notifications. They can come back and attest the memberships and make sure that everything is up to date. You know, maybe you have a situation where you need users that can use a self-service portal to enroll in some optional program. Grouper can help them do that. Maybe you want an in-common t-shirt, or you want a coaster or a sticker. If you attend the training, you can ask for that and we could send it to you. Grouper can really do anything. in access management that has been a common use case that we've implemented, and we have a list in the future so that we can constantly improve things. So
Great. Do you have any tips on how to get the most out of grouper school?
Well, first take the plunge and enroll. I guess be an advocate to get grouper installed in your institution, or if it's already installed, to be used, in a more widespread fashion. Part of using grouper is getting executive sponsorship. So if you're a technical person and trying to get grouper in your institution, maybe try to get some of the higher ups to attend as well, and they can sort of see what the buzz is about. But making centralized access management a core principle to your architecture that IT departments in your institution embrace really makes a difference. So I think having more people attend the training and sort of get on the same page helps with that. And that's one of the reasons that we keep the training non-technical, so to speak, so that we talk about access management in general and the value add there. Obviously setting aside the time for the training. It's 4 half days and then some pre-work. Just make sure that you can get coverage in your normal job and focus and really try to get that pre-work done and learned, so that when you're starting the training, you're at the same level as the other people that have done that. And then if you can sort of set aside the time and your mental capacity to do that, I think more likely than not you'll be successful. It helps, after the training, if you have some use cases that you can solve, just to keep it in your brain. If you take the training and then there's sort of a lag between that and when you're able to really start working on it, you might forget some of that or not have that. And we're going through the training, clicking the UI, and everything is almost muscle memory at the end, creating a group and assigning privileges. And if you don't keep that afterwards, you might lose it. So, but you'll be happy with your first use case. If auditors come and ask you, how do you ensure that admins of whatever system get removed when certain things happen, if they leave the institution or if their training expires or whatever, and you have a way to tell them that grouper can do that, and then the auditors are happy and smile and leave you alone, you'll find that it's worth it.
All right, thanks. So what is the pre-work for the class?
So there's too much content to fit into the amount of time that we have training for, and we don't want to take up too much time from people away from their normal job. So to introduce people to grouper and to the training, we have some computer-based trainings that people can do on their own time starting a week before the training. These are in video format, and you have an environment where you can run through exercises and just get familiar with the product before we get to training. Then we can sort of hit the ground running and get the most value that we can while the instructors are doing the interactive part of the training.
How does grouper school help students get more out of collaborating with the InCommon community?
Each grouper school class consists of a lot of different institutions that are probably similar to the institution that you're in. So, a lot of times when you're designing things or trying to figure out challenges, it's nice to be able to have a community to see if other people have had that problem and how they solved it. And going through the class, you at least have some names and have some contacts through Slack or other means to be able to ask those questions. When you go through grouper school, you'll create a bond with everyone. It's not, there are things that create closer bonds than grouper school, but at least you've been through something. More than that, though, sort of getting an introduction to the collaboration tools that Grouper has, the email list and the Slack channel. You'll be able to, after the class, more easily go and ask a question, and you might recognize some of the people on the channel. Or if you go to an in-common conference in the future, you might meet some people that you went through a training with. So yeah, it definitely helps people get into the community, your foot in the door, and it's a great community of people. Everyone is nice and answers questions. If you ask a question on the group or Slack channel, and you maybe forget to include what version you use, or include logs, or do some of the pre-work on that, people will answer your question anyways, and they might be more likely to if they know you.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy explaining concepts, helping people learn things, setting up examples, and making things hopefully not too boring and a little entertaining, so that people can pay attention and not sort of glaze over their eyes. So yeah, that is something that I love to do, and I have experience doing, and I hope to see you in grouper school if you can attend.